Assalamu alaikum and welcome to Open Dialogue with a new segment that's going to be this season talking about social issues. We're back after a long break and slowly a little bit delayed. Sorry for and apologize for that. Unfortunately, we had some technical issues. But I hope to raise more information and awareness to what's happening around in our society today. I've chosen different topics that hopefully that you will give you more information as to what's happening around you currently so that you can actually be aware of what to do and have these sort of information for you to actually have practical tips for your own benefit. With me today, we have Syed Molana Razawi. Assalamu alaikum. Always a pleasure and a blessing to be sitting with you. And we also have a special guest who's back with us, Dr. Haider Al-Hakim. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I want to remind you this is a live show. Please call in with any comments or statements or questions as we have the Syed and the doctor as myself here to answer anything that you want to talk about. Today's topic is about men's mental health. It's a really wide issue, and at the moment, yes, I am concentrating mainly on the male side because I think that it's slightly ignored. And with statistics recently showing that the increase of suicides amongst men have increased, especially under the age of 45. And we're going to go deeper into this and maybe touch on other areas as well, but probably revisit this topic again because it is so big and I'm only concentrating on this particular subject. So we'll start with you, Dr. Haider. When it comes to mental illness amongst men, what is your experience as to the reasons for this, especially with the increase being now?
Well, I mean, there is a society experience and then there's also a personal experience. And,
Okay.
It's important to discuss the personal experience because in my observation is that once you talk about your experiences in mental illness, it allows other people to relate to that. The major issue that I have noticed in mental illness in males is this lack of openness amongst them. As you know, males have big egos, and that stops them from opening up, and that stops them from being vulnerable. And it's this lack of vulnerability amongst males that predisposes them to a lot of mental illnesses. Obviously, there are genetic components, there are environmental components,
Of course, yes.
there are childhood traumas, because one of the major reasons or one of the major causes of mental illness amongst the general population is that you have what they call adverse childhood events. So that's one of the major causes for mental problems. So opening up about these topics, particularly males who are successful males, so to speak.
Yeah.
Males who are in successful professions. Males who have, they look as though that they have it all together. It's important to talk about these personal experiences. And I think, particularly in our community,
Yes.
I don't think that exists. I've never seen it happen.
It's hard.
I mean, I've never
to find.
seen programs or workshops or, I mean, obviously there are a few, but a few as in you count them on your hand. So that's a real problem.
Yeah.
And that's why the rate of mental illness is so high. I mean, I wouldn't say it's 1 in 4. That's the kind of general soundbite that people talk about. I think everyone has a degree of mental disability or illness. Some people can cope with it and carry on and stay functional, other people can't. So it's important to have a wider dialogue of mental illness amongst the males. And also the other major issue in terms of males is that we find it difficult to talk about our emotions. Now, males are more top-heavy in the sense that they're very logical beings.
Yeah, of course, rational,
And, you know, the concept of emotion and heart and feelings is alien to a lot of males, particularly the way that they've been brought up in modern society. So dealing with emotions is difficult for males. and emotions can be quite scary for them as well.
Yeah.
So that's the other reason why it's a major issue amongst our society.
Syed, what does that leave us in our sort of history, thinking about males? Are there any examples in the Ahlebait or just generally in Islam to show that we can have male that are vulnerable and show emotions, that maybe we can open up? Because it's not really mentioned much. It's always about the man being in charge and having that responsibility and taking on the role of being head of the family and, always being strong, things like that. So is there anything that we can show that and highlight that, yes, there is vulnerability and we can open up and we can talk, or is it something new now to this day and age?
There's no doubt that men try to hide and control more than the opposite sex, and that is why probably we see in the society that the survival rate for the ladies is far greater than men.
Yes, yes.
And ladies can resist more of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has designed them to nurture the future families, and the men's role is to protect and be providers, and maybe that's why they try to hide more, and that results into mental issues and problems. Someone was telling me majority of the dictators of the world had some kind of, especially men, have some kind of serious issues in their childhood. That's why they became dictators like that. So it does affect it does affect the men. That's generally.
So how can we resolve this? Like, to be honest, I know I personally do coach quite a lot of men, and they are coming and opening up more, and especially when they feel that there is help out there which is non-judgmental. As you know, I'm a life coach, so are you, alongside your, doctor, profession. And that gives a lot of assistance to individuals, knowing that they can be successful in their jobs or, but they can be lacking in other areas which they can come to.
Yeah.
So then, what do you think that needs to be, more involved?
So generally, and sort of more specifically to the community, so generally I think there is an issue with stigma in mental illness.
Yes.
So that's the major issue that we have throughout the world. It's not just because of our, not just in our community, but worldwide.
Widely.
So we have a stigma towards mental illness. Now, it's understandable because
No one wants
mental illness causes a lot of difficult emotions and difficult situations, difficult relationships, and it's not easy. It's not easy living with someone or seeing someone or dealing with someone who's going through psychosis or who's going through depression or is going through an anxiety attack. So these are all difficult topics, so it's understandable that they try and brush it under the carpet and turn it into a stigma.
But can they brush it under the carpet?
No, because any kind of stigma in society just keeps brewing
as we
on and on and on. So if you are treating mental health as a stigma, this will continue and it'll only get worse. And I think that's the reason why we've reached a point where we have to talk about something, because it's been around for such a long time. And given that the control of information is pretty much dissipated now, before you can control information, now information is freely available. And vast amounts of information is free available. So we have to unveil this problem. So stigma is the biggest issue when it comes to mental health. And this is everywhere.
Yeah, of course.
So when I work with doctors who have mental illness, there's a big stigma in terms of doctors with mental illness.
Yeah, of course.
And this is for all the Royal Colleges, Royal College of Physicians, Royal College of Psychiatrists, Royal College of Surgeons, and instead of supporting these people with mental illnesses, they get brushed under the carpet.
Or they get judged, in a particular way.
And the reason why some of the clients come and see you is because you put them in that psychologically safe space
Yes.
where judgment is not there.
Of course.
And for you, mental illness is less of a stigma compared to the general society. So they feel safe
Yeah.
to be able to express these views. Now, it's even more compounded within our community because mental illness is not just a stigma, it is a shame, it is a undignified existence. It's something that for some people they have this notion or they have this superstition that if you have mental illness there's something wrong with your faith.
That's one thing I wanted to talk about more.
There is something going on there that you're not strong in faith because why do you have mental illness? So this is a massive unspoken truth, another stigma, and this is a kind of a belief system or a story that gets perpetuated throughout the generations.
Yes.
And I think with these kind of programs we need to stop that. We need to say, look,
definitely.
This is wrong.
Yeah.
You don't just say these damaging words, and these are damaging words, because every word that you say and every word that you hear can either be a positive reinforcement or a negative reinforcement. So if we're saying that mental illness means a lack of faith, or that there is a problem in your faith, or there is a problem in your character, you're perpetuating that stigma.
Of course.
Now, science says that when you have a mental illness, you have an imbalance in your chemicals.
Yeah.
So scientifically speaking, there is a physiological imbalance going on in your body. How did you get to that? Because of all these different things in your, not just your childhood, but your past generations.
Yeah.
So, you know, I've had 54 members of my family executed in Iraq because of their belief system. That will have an effect on my parents.
Yes.
Physiologically speaking, I'm talking about physiologically speaking, it will have effect on them.
Right.
When you have a physiological response, it does affect the way you think, and it does affect your mood.
Of course.
And then that changes your behaviors, and then that eventually changes your habits, and then you reinforce that with the next generation. So stigma is a problem throughout the world. It's not just an Islamic issue, but let's not, feed the fire and make it bigger.
Syed, what is your thoughts on when people say that, obviously, if you have mental illness, that, it's lack of faith? Because I know there are, we're going to come on to the remedies as well, but, some of the remedies do show that, if you're content and if you can live with less, if you're more spiritual, you have a better outlook on life. So there are certain pointers that can make that, but obviously, because it's so wide and we are being general, there are certain areas of mental illness that doesn't really come to play. So what does Islam say about having these sort of mental illnesses, and does that make it like you have lack of faith?
It depends on the personality of the person who is facing the problems. For example, we cannot say that our prophets did not face problem, but did they reach to this status or not? If you look at Imam Ali's example, he faced so many problems, and he had so much to give to people. He used to go and sit at the well and cry and pray to his God, and but it didn't mean that he had a weak faith. He was complaining to Allah and God, I have so much to offer, I have so much solutions to give, but there is no one to understand me. So for imams and ma'asumeen, we cannot say that they had mental illness, but they as a human being suffered just like we suffer. We suffer maybe more because we don't have that level of knowledge. So for example, if God forbid I start facing similar problems, that I'm not trying to make myself equal to imams or holy prophets, but I wouldn't have maybe that strength to protect my faith. And this is what Imam Ali used to teach, that when you are facing problems, pray to God, you don't lose faith. So that is the most valuable thing that we have in our hand. So we should try to keep faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, although it's easy to say and difficult to.
Yeah. There are daily habits and rituals that can help the mindset, obviously, in our way of thinking and perceiving. But obviously, with today's society, there's a lot more pressures, and we are sort of, taken into extreme situations where even things like, addictions and overindulgence, and also keeping up with the Joneses, and all those sort of like social pressures, that can sort of like make this even more if you're not looking at it from like the sort of chemical imbalance. I think we can build ourselves up to some sort of anxiety, stress, and depression for that extent. But then some of the remedies that are given out there, especially by the doctors, like for example, antidepressants and things like that, and people just want to have it as a quick fix, and they think that that's what's going to help them. But I personally think, and speaking to a lot of people and talking about this on different shows as well, bringing this up, that there has to be a variety. For example, your diet, the way you live, the way in which you, even if you take those antidepressants, for me it's like it's just something like just to jumpstart you, so that you can actually go and do something more and find those self-development ways of being. So what sort of tips do you give people?
Well, where do we start? I mean, the first thing I'd say is please seek professional advice.
Yes,
so
definitely.
I mean, that's absolutely paramount. I don't want people going away thinking, right, I can
do this myself.
I can do this myself. If you have mental illness of any sort, you need to seek professional advice.
But how do you recognize it? Some people don't recognize it. There's so many different stages.
We all have different relationships, whether it's siblings, whether it's family members. We can see that something's off. Okay, and the most commonest form of mental illness is depression.
Yes.
Then it's anxiety, and then it's the sort of positive, illnesses like psychosis and schizophrenia and bipolar. So let's say that these are kind of serious to moderate illnesses. You need to seek medical advice, and you need to see your GP.
Yeah.
GPs are very good at recognizing mental illness, and the majority of GP, 99.99% of GPs, won't be starting you on antidepressants. They'll be talking about lifestyle changes through the causes that precipitated you into getting this sort of mental
triggers,
mental anguish. So saying that I'll just go and see a GP and they'll put me on, that's not going to happen. So that's the first thing. Have trust in the medical profession, have trust in the healthcare profession, and it's not just GPs. You've got psychologists, you've got therapists. So there's a whole network of professionals that provide this really, really important aspect of your well-being. Then there's lots of charities. There are major charities, and we can leave a link to the charities here in the UK, and they do some amazing work in the community, highlighting these issues, so that when they educate, as the Syed say, when they educate people about these issues, they understand that, oh, my sibling's going through this.
Yeah.
Because his mood's down, his appetite's down, he doesn't enjoy the things he used to enjoy, he doesn't open up anymore, he's bottling things up, he's not being himself. So people are very in tune as well, and particularly females, they're very intuitive. They know when something's going on, and they know when something's going wrong. So there is a whole network of professionals within this area, and what I want people to sort of understand is that it's okay to talk about these things, and there's a lot of resources out there.
Yes.
Now, we do need to talk about personal responsibility
here.
Yes,
I was going to say.
Which is what your question is kind of alluding to. You do need to change yourself.
Yeah.
So when I was going through my mental illness, and when I was going through times of suicide, is that I didn't take the responsibility upon me to actually think, I've got this problem, it's okay to have this problem, it's not really a stigma for myself, and I was in fear because I felt I was fearful being judged. Who was I fearful being judged by? By my wife, because I thought, right, she's a woman of faith. How is she going to judge me? So that was my kind of dilemma, that I didn't feel comfortable enough. I was in a position of fear of not coming forward. So I had to take that personal responsibility to sort of fall into that fear. And I did open up to her. And it was amazing. I was so surprised that she actually was non-judgmental. So
that was the first
you mustn't
step.
underestimate, just because society, and just because your community, and just because your profession, and just because you read somewhere an article that says, yes, I'm going to be stigmatized and I'm going to be judged,
It's going to
and I'm going to be heard. But it goes back to personal responsibility. Now, people say, well, these. I had a relative who killed himself. How dare you say these things, and so on. There are prerequisites for a person killing themselves. They have to go through a period of time of a lot of depression, severe depression, and then they're in a lot of pain. So a person who kills himself is in a lot of pain. And the question is not why did they kill themselves. You ask, why did they have so much pain? And there are many reasons for that. So going back to my point, having that sense of personal responsibility, so that you know that when you're down, now we're going to the extremes here. We want to go at the start, isn't it?
Yeah,
we
I was going to say about timing.
Yeah, we want to catch it
'cause
before you go
like
down.
That. You can't think like that.
So we want to catch it early. And we need these people to feel safe
to get there.
to actually open up. Now, in our community, we don't have these safe spaces.
No.
So I would definitely advise my brothers and sisters to open up to the wider community, because there's so much services there. And there's also a number of Muslim doctors, psychiatrists, and professors in the behavioral sciences who have that cultural outlook, who have that religious and cultural relevance to be able to explain to you that this mental illness is actually okay. It's okay to have faith and have these mental problems as well.
Sure.
So there's a couple of doctors. One is Dr. Ahmed Hanka, who's he's from Lebanon, and he's a psychiatrist, and he talks about his experiences of having these mental illness, being a psychiatrist, and also talking about the issues of Islamophobia, because that also perpetuates the problem of mental illness, the discrimination that he went through being a refugee. So having this cultural relevance and have this religious relevance, and there's also...
Sorry, I'm going to have to cut you for a minute because we do have a call and we'll come back to your point. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Assalamu alaikum, Doctor and Molana.
Alaikum salam.
Now this is, Doctor, the point what you raised actually, to what I see through my experience and everything, I think there is a lot of mental problems in deprived areas, third world countries, and at the community level. I think if the community really wants to work and make somebody happy and give him a support, then that mental problem would disappear. But I think rather than going to the GP and all that, in third world countries, I don't think there are facilities of that nature. So I think the community is really responsible for that, because mostly what happens if somebody is slightly mentally disturbed or what, the community even makes it worse by giving him an impression that you are not worth anything, and that's why there are a lot of suicide things happening. So I think community as a whole is responsible rather than anybody else, because I think if you see in the most poorest country or deprived places, you'll find a much bigger people having those sort of a problem, or they are depressed. Why are they depressed? What is that they are depressed for? I think this is one thing that it has to take at the community level rather than anything else. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your call. I really appreciate that. And you have highlighted something really important. And yes, we are talking from a perspective where we have all the facilities and we've got, the resources, the finance and everything in place. And I think really, even if we have all of that, I think what's really required is a change in mindset. Because when you have a change in mindset, that's when you become powerful, and especially within our communities. And even though we've got the centers and the mosques, we need to provide these sort of psychologists and psychotherapists, coaches, whatever it is, to give this assistance. Because like I know the Syed himself, he works alongside, people trying to help them in various ways, but we need to have more assistance for him in order to, collaborate so that we can give this. And the communities around them need to change their way of thinking, like you mentioned before.
Yeah.
Because you need people around you, firstly, that surround you to give you that support.
The caller made a very, very valid point. I recently came back from Iraq and I did some work there on mental health for the local population. There's no mental health workers there.
Yes.
So it's crazy. There's only one hospital in the whole country in Iraq that deals with...
So that takes the last sort of line in order to help everything
really
else.
Severe cases.
Yeah.
And the mind boggles. It's... but then, they have other coping strategies to deal with that. Their situation is different from our situation.
That's what I'm saying, yes.
Which is totally different. But it is a worldwide issue. But I think if we take the personal responsibility, and if there's more and more people taking personal responsibility...
And talking about it as well.
That creates a community, a welcoming community, a warm community, an accepting community, a non-judgmental community, a community that doesn't have that stigma about mental illness.
And what do you think, say, that we could do more to, talk about this, invite this in our centers and mosques, and provide the assistance that everyday people can come to? Because I do see even that, for example, even counseling, that is like to the extreme. You have to be in a particular element in order to seek counseling. But there's things that you could do before that, prior to that, which maybe there's no referrals or there's no one to refer to. So what do we need to do for these things?
I think, as the caller was saying, that in the past, these mental issues did exist, and people used to sort these issues out by referring to the family members or elders of the community, or speaking to ulama and scholars. Then the ulama, cannot be expert in every field.
No, exactly. That's what I mean.
The way doctor is expert or you are expert, I cannot help them. I refer the cases to the professionals.
Yes.
For example, there are many people who come to me. They wouldn't dare to come to you directly. They wouldn't come to you, but they would prefer to come to me.
Yes.
And then that starts something for them. That help begins from there. So I don't know. Maybe ulama and Islamic centers have to provide surgeries and give space to the professionals to have these kind of facilities available for people. And certainly at our center we have this policy in South London, and we have provided our facility to the psychotherapists, psychologists, or all the professionals in the mental health to use our facilities with their own insurance, because one of the problems in this society is that you need to have insurance. We don't have that insurance, but you as a professional may have insurance to deal with such problems. So as long as we provide the facilities, and ulama should not be judgmental about the people who come to them. In some cases, people are afraid to even go to ulama, or I will be judged, or I will be given fatwa against. So they should not be judgmental. They should accept who comes to them and then try to redirect them in the right direction.
I've had quite a few emails and messages actually with regards to this topic, and yes, we are concentrating on men specifically, but it is wider, obviously, even with women to men. It's slightly different. Even with children now, there's like an increase in, children having mental illness from such a young age, and the government recently have, placed sort of like plans where teachers are more equipped to deal with behaviors and to spot, children in this situation. So it's really worrying.
Which is a good thing, I mean.
Yes,
previously
of course.
in the past,
That wasn't. It was ignored.
You just develop behaviors and you turn into.
Children wouldn't
labeling.
open up. Yeah.
Yes, a different labeling. But like again, bringing it back to a lot of like people from our communities, especially, they do feel that, oh well, we've got all these sayings in the Quran, we've got all the hadith, we've got the tawakkul, we've got spirituality, and that should be the one and the way forward. And if they don't want to take the medication or they don't want to take and seek other things, then what is your stance on that? Because like, to what extent are we as normal everyday human beings living in this, especially world society, are able to just use that as a form of healing?
Spirituality is a form of healing. Yeah, I mean, if it's, if there is true spirituality there and true faith. So, which I don't think, there is true faith and spirituality if they're having these sort of issues. And we
Or do you think there's different levels and different times? Because,
Yeah.
as humans, we go through things, right? Anything can
Of course,
trigger
I
it.
mean, there are different stresses and so on, but think of well-being as a kind of hierarchy. The lowest form of well-being is physical well-being. So you need to have a physically safe space for you to develop well-being. Then comes the psychological well-being. So you need to have that community, and you need to have those relationships, and you need to have those intimate environments that allows you to express your psychological side and the internal emotions and the difficult emotions. So you need to have that, and then you can have the spiritual transcendence, and so it's not sort of the other way around.
People think there's one answer to it all as well, don't they? Like, oh, it's either medical or it's either spiritual. But
well, there is a
there's more.
basis. There is a basis, and the basis is physical.
Okay.
If you're physically safe, then you can build on the psychological. If you're psychologically safe, you can build on the spiritual. You can't have it the other way around. That's in my opinion, my medical opinion. If you've got wars and you've got famines and you've got poverty, and no matter how much spirituality you give to that person, they'll always have problems.
It's funny you
so
say
that brings into it the political issues and the geopolitical issues, and that's fine, and that's a major issue for the people in those areas, right? So let's not get things mixed up here. So that's one aspect.
Yeah.
Here in the UK, if you have financial problems, if you have physical problems, that will affect your psychological well-being.
Yeah, there's different. Yeah.
That will affect your psychological well-being, and if it affects your psychological well-being, you won't be transcending into the seventh level of spiritual well-being.
It's funny you say that, comparing it to places that are, obviously with war, or someone who's gone through, for example, even here, going through some sort of tragedy or something extreme in their life experience. But there are also psychotherapists that have written to say that with case studies to show that people with a particular mindset and an outlook on life.
I understand where you're going with this, but physically, they're still functioning.
I understand.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
They're eating, they're warm, they're physically safe.
Yeah.
Okay, they still need that physical safety. Then they can work on the mindset.
Okay.
Okay. So, someone who, for example, who's lost an arm, blind and deaf, and yet they are a para-Olympian gold medalist.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, but they're still physically safe, as in they've got a home, they've got their finances, so all of the basics are there. You can't be a super 12 gold medalist para-Olympian if you don't have the finances.
I know what you mean. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
And if you don't have that psychological
But it doesn't start that way, though, because I'm sure at the beginning, because there are people that even say, for example, we look at happiness. People say, like, the happiness level. Recent studies have shown, for example, in the city of California.
Well, we have to start somewhere, Fahima. It's a complicated issue.
Yeah,
so we will be
I understand
you'll
that.
say something, the mindset is very important.
Yes.
Spirituality is very important, but you still need to have the basics. If the basics are not there, most people will falter.
Yes, but I'm highlighting
You need to have
certain
the basics.
cases that where.
Well, certain cases doesn't mean it's the norm.
Yeah, of course,
You know,
of course. But that gives
just means
hope.
it's the
That
outlet.
gives hope.
Hope is always there. Hope
Yeah.
is always there. I think the importance of this program is to say, let's get rid of the stigma, right? And let's be more vulnerable as a male population to be able to talk about these things, to be able to talk about our emotions. Those are the two underlying problems that we have in this society. You know, getting rid of that macho frame of reference, getting rid of that macho mindset, getting rid of that perfection mindset that I've got everything sussed and I've got everything perfect and I can take on everything. No, that's not how it works. You know, you are imperfect. You will make mistakes. You will fall down. You need help. And in terms of males, we need other male role models. We need other role models who have faltered, seen how they got out of it, and open up to them. So,
Well,
the
your story
organisation-
alone is quite inspirational to say that, you know, someone who's successful, who is, you know, doing what you're doing, and we can still go through these kind of things, and you
Yeah.
can open up and talk
No one's
about it
immune.
publicly.
I mean, at the end of the
Exactly.
day, you know, it's like physical illness. You're not immune from heart disease. You're not immune from cancer. You're not immune from infections. Well, you're not immune from mental illness. It's just like a physical illness, because physiologically speaking, the chemicals in your body is causing you to have
Yes,
these
of course.
thoughts and these behaviors, and you know these mindsets. So it's normal. It happens to
Definitely.
everyone.
Yeah.
Like your own family. I mean, you after losing 54 members of your family
Yeah, yeah.
by Saddam and in Iraq,
Yeah.
how your family survived.
Yeah.
So that
Well, not everyone.
that itself
You know,
is.
I mean, you know,
I'm sure you must have had some
survived
casualties.
And you know, the majority didn't, and you know, the majority do have, you know, a lot of pain, mental pain, and so on. So this is a reality.
Yeah.
Some people win and some people don't.
Yeah. I'm sure there must have been some casualties as well.
Well, what I'm trying to say is the majority of casualties. You know,
Yeah.
You know, like the majority.
Yeah.
Are living in difficulty, and I'd say a lot of people who are watching this program are in pain
Yeah.
and find it difficult to talk about these things because of the stigma and because of the
Yeah.
judgment. So, you know, hopefully, you know, the more we allow people to reframe the whole dialogue, I mean, that's what we're saying.
Yeah, definitely.
We want to reframe the language around mental. I mean, I don't call it, as you've noticed, I don't call it mental health. It's not mental health, it's mental illness.
It's mental illness, yes.
You know, it's not
the
mental
language,
health.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, you've got, I've got a mental illness which I need to be aware of, and I need to know what the triggers are, and I need to know what makes me go into the red zone, and what keeps me out of the red zone. So that takes self-reflection, self-awareness, connecting with the power higher than you, connecting with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with the Ummah.
Yeah.
These are all these different things allow you to stay away
From the
from that red zone, which causes you to be dysfunctional. But when you're in the red zone, they need all the support we can give them by reframing the language that we use. And unfortunately, I mean, at the time when I went through my mental turmoil, I was in Iraq, which is very isolating, and you know, the whole language and the whole dialogue that goes on there for these issues is just non-existent. So being here and knowing that there are so many services out there who are culturally sensitive,
Of course.
religiously sensitive, and reflective to our personal and cultural and religious foundations, I think that's a blessing.
Oh, absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Well, we have come towards the end of the show, but before we go, if you'd like to give some final thoughts, firstly, you say it before we leave.
we should never lose faith and keep trusting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and pray for others and be available for help for others.
Definitely, that's what we're trying to do, and hopefully we can collaborate more and have more people on board to give these services and assist, yourself with your work. What about you?
Just reach out and
Yeah.
reach out for help. There's lots of people out there. We'll leave some links
Oh,
on,
yes,
on the
absolutely.
website, and please ask for help.
Well, thank you both so much for your time. It's gone really quickly and I could have spoken even longer. And it was really a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for watching and for your calls. We do appreciate that because it does actually help us also, jerk our memories as to what is actually happening out there. And it's really a fundamental topic which I hope to revisit even in the future. We will be running the show for the next few months, inshallah. Please send in your comments, and if there's anything that you do require assistance with, please send in your details. There should be some links and phone numbers and my email as well on there, or contact your local GP or anyone that you feel that you can actually help, give you the help professionally, because you do need to see somebody that is professional, who is trained, so that you can have the best assistance for yourself. I hope to see you next week with a new topic and another guest on Open Dialogue. And inshallah, we will see you next time on Ahlebait TV. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.